liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you.
Skip verses or something.
Okay, the first order of business is to approve the minutes of the meetings of June 19th, 2017, and June 26th of 2017, and January 10th of this year.
I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes of June 19th, June 26th of 2017, and January 10th of 2018.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second the motion.
Okay, discussion or errors or omissions?
I'm assuming the ones I pointed out have been fixed. I didn't look, but.
Excuse me?
That was executive, those aren't these
Oh,
ones.
those were executive, those
Yep.
ones? Oh, then there wouldn't be any.
Okay. Call for a vote, those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And we have approval for release of executive session minutes from June 15th of 2017 and June 26th of 2017. What are the wishes of the board?
I make a motion to accept the approval and release of the executive session minutes of June 15th and June 26th of 2017.
Second the motion.
Okay. Discussion? Errors or omissions or anything? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. I believe that has to be roll call, right? I think it does.
We can, that's fine.
Okay. In favor?
All in favor?
Yep. Myself in favor. Okay, we have a public comment section, I don't know. Anybody, Claire, do you have any? No, just here. Brad, do you have any? Okay.
Just here to take
Yep.
notes.
Okay. I'm sure things will come up as we go through the business of the night. Old business, the outdoor cannabis cultivation update.
Yeah, so basically, the planning board right now is having their public hearing sessions on how the town wants to go forward with the zoning and any other regulations to go, that they want to try to push forward relative to the recreational zoning bylaws. And I actually got a update from CMRPC, kind of more of a premiere as to where they are on the state level for their regulations, that I disseminated to you guys and also to the members of the planning board. That kind of gives them the overview of what, you know, when they're drafting local regulations, to what be mindful of and what kind of things to go through. So hopefully it's some good building blocks for what the final regulations come out to be. But since we can't make it to this one, I would encourage you guys to probably go to the next one in 2 weeks. I know CMRPC has been attending those and will be involved in the final regulations that they do end up passing.
Okay. Is the chief available, or is he coming in?
Yeah, I told him right around 6:30, so I can go over and see. if
Okay,
he's
why don't we
available.
just go on to the next, skip over his special event permit?
Yep, so, the girl submitted that wasn't available tonight for tonight's meeting, but they're looking to do another event at Carter Stevens Farm. They did this summer. It's like a kids obstacle course out in the field. She's got sign off from all the departments and the police chief for a parking and traffic plan, so we have every sign off on that.
Okay.
The only one, I apologize, the only one we don't have is planning, and they haven't met. So I did ask the planning board, one of the members, if he would mind if I had you guys approve it pending their approval, because they're meeting, I believe, next week or something. And this event isn't until
February 24th. it says.
February, yeah.
If you're uncomfortable, we can push this off too.
Yes,
They did sign off on, the planning board did sign off on the last event, which was
Yeah,
similar.
but my opinion is up to the other board members, of course, but my opinion, as I stated before, I'm trying to set a precedent that things come here prepared and fully signed off before we do. You know, there is time to do it and certainly have us meet and sign it beforehand. And just trying to get things procedurally done the way they should be done. So I would rather see it signed first, but that's just one opinion.
Okay.
The chief is
think-
here.
The other thing, aspect of this is, I think as we're going through it, I recall some discussion about traffic issues up on Sunrise Avenue.
That's not this, it's not the same caliber event. This
Okay.
event is 100 people in
Oh,
in
okay.
one day,
Oh,
100
okay.
to 300
Okay.
people. Or
Okay.
100
300
attendees, 300 spectators total.
300 participants, 100 spectators, it
Yeah.
says in there, so 400 people, but still
Yeah.
very different from 10,000.
Yeah, it's not the same caliber
Yes, it is.
event.
Okay, okay.
I don't think there'd be any problem, but I don't think there's any problem to wait and just have them sign off either, but that's
Okay.
just my voice. You guys
Is
don't
the,
have to be as
is the next planning
diligent.
board meeting?
I'm gonna look that up actually right now.
I think it's actually February 5th, is the next
Right.
regular.
And once again, it's not, I don't want to feel any pressure on this board to sign things in advance just because these weren't pre-planned and put into motion far enough in advance to be prepared for us. And that's what I'm trying to get people to understand. When they come in front of the board, they ought to, plan ahead a little bit and make sure they get all their ducks in a row before they come here. They still have time to have this done properly. But the more often we keep accepting things that aren't ready and signing them pending something else being completed, it takes away from our goal.
It looks like possibly their next meeting is February 6th.
And the planning board did just meet, what, a week or so ago, so.
No, that was conservation.
Didn't the planning board meet to discuss marijuana issues with the public? Isn't that a
That's
meeting I
right.
saw?
That's as we're speaking.
Oh, they're doing that today.
And that's not a meeting. They're holding a informational meeting. It's not a regular meeting for them. They're only doing this informational.
I'm just looking to see if they're-
It looks like their next meeting looks to be February 6th.
Maybe we need to ask them to have a meeting prior to then, because just like every one of us, you can't skip a whole month of meetings just because you're doing these two special public meetings. You just add another meeting to your monthly schedule.
Well, they meet monthly and it's like the first of the month.
They meet twice a month. The Tuesday after the Monday that the select board meets, both times. But in lieu of that, they're doing the public hearings for recreational marijuana. Maybe we might ask them if they can
The next-
squeeze in a half hour to hit some of these items,
The next meeting's January 30th.
Do some of their business.
We can do
just
that.
to,
We
Yeah,
can-
that's that public hearing night again.
Yes.
Once again, they're there, they can schedule the business that comes before.
if possible, just ask them. I do know that this also indicates that the applicant is looking to start setup February 9th. So I do know that it's not just the day of the event, so the timing, they kind of wouldn't want to,
Mhm.
so waiting too deep into February, so it,
Right, when did they start the process with the paperwork?
Shortly after the beginning of January. I mean, I don't remember what day I sent it to them, but I have a sign off from the police chief from January 11th.
I think they'll,
2 days earlier than
Yeah.
no, I think they'll get it done on time, but if you were planning such an event, I think a month lead time, knowing what you have to go through, is really cutting it close on their end, not our end. Charlie, you got a question? Charlie, you got a question?
Charlie?
What? Yeah, Claire?
I just have a comment.
Yep.
Why can't they have a special meeting just to vote on something when it needs to be done? You know,
I mean,
like
we all
we've
can
done
sit
it.
here and say that, why
You
can't
know,
they,
we've
but they're,
always done it.
they're their own commission, we
You
can't.
know,
No, that's.
I don't know how they, maybe their board's only available certain times, I do not know that. But if you guys would like me to send it back to them to wait, we can. I think, my only concern is that we're getting close on this event's time,
Sure.
when they gave it to us in sufficient time, but not all the committees meet.
I
So
wouldn't think that a
frequently.
month and a half out sufficient time to plan a 400-person event. I would think you'd start that planning sooner.
Well, I don't think they're planning the event, I think they're just looking for sign-off.
I would think they probably started their process much earlier than this, and they perhaps should have started their sign-off much sooner, is my point. And this is what I'm trying to get everyone to understand when they come forward with these things. Think ahead a little bit and start with this process. Don't dump it on our laps. Well, we have to take care of it right now because it's gonna mess them up. That's not following our procedure, and that's not something we're doing wrong here. We take care of this when it's signed off. My opinion.
Mm-hmm.
When this is submitted, is the individual required to go to each separate department and commission and submit it, or submit it to a central department and then we distribute it to the various departments?
Sometimes it depends,
Well,
I mean, they
it
reach out-
shouldn't necessarily
No,
depend, we
it-
should tell them
it
who to
comes to
submit
you.
it to.
it
It
comes
comes to us,
yeah.
we submit it out.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
It's, we're the starter.
It's only if they're looking for any additional information that they have to go to another department
Right.
to provide that.
And is planning the only board that actually is a board that has to meet in this? It looks like it, correct?
No, conservation signs off, everybody signs off.
Well, it looks like Board of Health signed off, not Conservation.
Yeah, this is an old form that was, we corrected this to have all the departments on here.
Well, it's, no,
Okay, so
you
the
just
health
swap,
is-
it looks like.
They just
conserva-
swapped them out, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it looks like they signed in the
Strange.
wrong place.
All right, all I would ask, understanding the situation, and apparently we're just trying to clarify some things with our process, is even if they were to meet at their normal meeting time, it's still the day after our next meeting before this is planned to just start up really. So what I would ask is, could you reach out to them to see if they could actually meet prior to our meeting to discuss this, and then we can just close the deal at our next meeting before the end of the month.
And since they're already planning on meeting this month, we can just ask for them to do it at that time. Doesn't
As
matter
long
that
as it's not
at-
still the day after our next meeting, that's all.
They can do it after everybody's already left the building for the public hearing and just review it.
And see if they can do that. If not, we might revisit this and just try to clarify our procedure moving forward.
Right, and going back to the applicant's perspective, if this came back to the planning board and they had issues or concerns, they're not gonna have any time to address those concerns, because they brought this forward just a month out from their event. We're assuming this is just straight sign-offs and there are no concerns. The larger events, more concerns may arise as they go on, and they might wanna consider, setting their application a month or two earlier. These aren't events that they've planned at the drop of a hat. This has probably been in the works for quite a while, or at least on their agenda for a while. So, you better get this in sooner rather than later. And if something comes back that requires modification on their part, they'd have time to do it. Because if the planning board comes back with a special request now, they may not have time to complete this in time.
Yep. I did give this to the Mary Ann, the admin for those departments, prior to the conservation. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, we can take it up at the next meeting. Okay?
Sure.
Yep.
Did they say where they're off-street parking? Oh, there we go. They're gonna do it.
And they submitted to me, we talk about everything being on the street.
On the street?
All,
Off the street, yeah, it says. It's a very blacked out picture, so I really can't make out
Do you
where.
want this one?
Where does it look
This
like
is
they're
the
doing
color one.
where does it look like they're doing the parking? Is it just up
I'm
in the
sorry?
farm? They're just parking up on the farm there?
there's
It looks-
a letter that they sent, I sent.
Yeah. Which they have, you have that letter too.
Okay. assume you're requiring a detail or no?
No. As long as it's off-road and they're with that low amount of traffic, it doesn't seem that there'd be enough to impact the flow of traffic.
Probably just when they're coming and going initially. I assume they're all coming in about the same time in this then?
This isn't the first time they've done it, and we didn't have any, is this year too, Pat?
This is probably the third event.
So I saw, we monitored it last year, and there was no impact.
So it's 10 to 3 is 5
Who are you
hours.
looking
They
for?
probably
Town
stagger
hall.
the starts anyway, so it's not like they're all
Original town hall.
coming in at 10 and all leaving at 3. It's spread out, so
Yeah,
it's.
you barely.
Right next
The
to
big white
Subway.
building.
All right.
Okay. You all set with this now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief, I guess you're, come forward to the proverbial seats here and welcome tonight.
Thank you. The two issues that I wanted to discuss were the first is the Barre Falls Dam contract, which initially got, I'm familiar with the contract because obviously we fulfill it all year long. But the contract was actually sent to me for signing, and first I sent it to Andrew because it's not appropriate for me to sign on behalf of the town. But then I raised some concerns, and I wanted to, after talking with Andrew, we decided that best to bring them to you. Initially, I looked at it and I thought, well, it's $5,900 for the services for the year, and I thought, well, that would really help if it went into, say, our vehicle acquisition account, not mine, but the town's, because that's the biggest impact that we have. And then the more I thought about it, with the location of the property and what they expect of us, it's an old number. $5,900 a year doesn't nearly cover what we put into it. So, in effect, unless there's a bigger good neighbor reason for doing this and the money's not important, to me, it's an old contract that doesn't pay for the services that they receive. It's $17 per 30-minute patrol, 2 patrols a day, not necessarily, we do it every day, but there are times they want, an evening and a morning patrol. I mean, sometimes it's at our discretion. The fact is, that doesn't really pay for the officer. It certainly doesn't pay for the officer and the wear and tear on the equipment, and then if a guy's on overtime when they do it, it certainly doesn't pay for their time. It doesn't pay for my time at my rate of pay, and it doesn't pay for the deputy chief, but we do it. So my first thought was that the contract doesn't pay enough for the town to be providing this. And then the wear and tear on the cruiser, you must have a 4-wheel drive to do this. So we have to send a 4-wheel drive vehicle out there, and it's rough. You're driving over rough roads because we don't just stay on the main road. And my thought is, first of all, if we're going to continue with the contract, it puts us as far away from the Quabbin High School and Junior High School that really is almost as far as you can get. In case of an emergency, that taps us out. And so I don't like that aspect of it. So with that argument, I really don't even think patrolling it is efficient for us if we're trying to service anybody in the town that's over on that side. It just puts us too far away. Second, if we are going to do it, I'd like to see them contributing more. I'd love to see money coming in every few years for a cruiser to make up for the fact that we're climbing all their hills and going down through their rivers and stuff like that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention and let you know what I thought. Certainly the money is not enough, so either it's a goodwill gesture or there's something I don't know.
Back page of this looks like it says the total cost was increased by $5,600 from $125,682 to $131,282.
We're getting
Total value of the contract, so.
So they're saying that the total value of the contract, because we're adding another year, is.
Right.
Okay, so it's been $5,600 since 1985.
So they added 10 cents or something
Exactly.
to each thing, and
So this started in what? It started in 85, right?
I don't know that.
50 and 32 years.
The first Form 10B dated 29 April 1985. Original contract order date.
He's gonna use a calculator and do it fast.
That's 33 years. Yeah, just about $4,000 a year, so it's steadily increased.
Yeah, I'm up to 39 and change, so yeah. 39 and change. So yes, it's gone up, but yeah, 4,000 even in the beginning, so the average of 4,000 a year. Yeah, so that's definitely, that's some one-year cost. I agree, it's not a lot. Do you have any numbers or estimates for the cost per mile on the SUVs?
No, but I do think that my way of looking at it is there should be a cycle where they give us enough money to replace a vehicle, so whether that's every 3 or 4 years. A cruiser lasts 5 years. A cruiser driving over Barre Falls Dam is gonna last less. It's maybe $45,000 to put four-wheel drive on the road, maybe $48,000, so I'm saying that they should be contributing significantly to that. I mean, the town takes the liability of, you know, when we're out there, an officer could get hurt, town assumes that responsibility, the insurance, et cetera. When there's a special event out there, the town assumes the responsibility for putting an extra detail on because we can't put our shift out there. These are all the things that money-wise, but at the very least, you know, the vehicle is it's a solid something that we can aim at and take some burden off the town.
Would you say it takes at least 1 hour to do each patrol?
Well,
For
not
building checks included?
really depends on the time of year. When it's pretty deep snow, it's an hour. If you go down and back, it's an hour. When you're doing the side roads, you know, we make it last 30 minutes. Some guys just make it 30, some guys are in there 45 minutes, but they're asking for 30. Okay, so we'll say that, but yeah, in the bad weather, it takes longer. You can creep through.
Roughly 4.5 miles from the center out to there, then driving out's gonna be 5 miles. So it's at least 10 miles round trip as well, which at roughly 30 cents a mile for the vehicle cost would be $3 a trip. Just for vehicle value, without adding fuel into it or anything else. So
So I
I'd
think the IRS rate of
Yeah.
45 cents.
Yeah, with that we'll go, we have another 50%, so just call it $5 a trip. 2 trips a day is $10 a day just on the vehicle wear. And if it's done in 365 days, it's 3,650 just in vehicle wear without the officer's time. So I mean, we're starting to basically, we just call it 4,000, be realistic. Just in the vehicle, so this barely compensates us $1,600 for the officer's time, which if we average 45 minutes a day, and it's roughly 270 hours, it's 2 trips a day though, right?
It should be. It's
So
not always.
540,
It's not always.
so you say 500 hours. Our expense for the officers, counting our contributions and benefits is probably closer to 30, 35 an hour.
I'd say probably average 60,000 after everything.
Which would be 30 an hour anyways, but if we were 30 an hour for 500 hours, that's another $15,000. So yeah, we should be looking closer to 19,000 to make this just a break-even point for us. Not trying to make money off it, it's our expense is about $19,000 a year, we're recuperating 5,600. It's a really, really bad contract.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, you know, maybe they'll get the state police to come out and do it for less. But it's, you know, it's certainly reasonable to express that, you know, the real cost for vehicle wear in officer time for us, our real cost is $19,000 approximately for this service. So we'd like them to contribute that. You know, certainly over the past years, they've made out like a bandit. You know, if you average, let's say the first year, you know, 4,000 was a real expense. And even if we average expense out between 15,000 and 4,000, you call it, I mean, 19 and 4, call it 23. It's $11,500 would be the
Mhm.
midpoint. So we've been losing, you know, for quite a bit of time. It should have, it should have been 11.5 average, not 4 average, so we're 7,500 average for 19 years. Roughly,
Yeah.
$300,000 behind.
Can I just say something?
Yep.
I think that when it started, the town was just doing the summer months.
Yeah, the
Back
current
then.
contract covers the whole year and
Okay.
extra effort during the summer
But when
compared
it
to the
started, it
winter.
was just the summer months.
Yeah.
And those would be much easier times too, especially if the cruise has gone out to that end of town, you can just slide down the road, it's not a special trip, but to make the trips in the winter especially, it's a lot more. But either way, if it's a $19,000 expense now, and the average fairly would have been about $11,500 per year average over that 19 years, we're way off base where it should have been. So.
Okay, how do you want to pursue this? Do you want to go back to him, or do you want
I feel that it's the purview of the town administrator and the board of selectmen to do this.
I'd run those rough
I
numbers
could
by
take,
him.
right, I could take these numbers and present it to them.
to? Okay.
Just going
Does that
quickly,
sound
where,
okay?
and I would make a point to say, the average cost over the years should have been about $11,500 a year, which means we've lost about $7,500 average for 19 years, which is approximately, $150,000 we've lost in vehicle use and officer pay because of this contract. So, we're not trying to recoup that, we're just trying to prevent further loss. And I think if they understand where the numbers really are, you can tell them the cents per mile for the vehicle and the trip out there, not counting going through the snow in the winter. And, basically what it costs to have an officer go out there for an hour twice a day, to do the whole thing is, and I think I only said 45 minutes a day too, I didn't say.
It's not twice a day. It's a total of 320 patrols. If you look at section 3, that total is based on 320 patrols at $17.50 an hour, comes to the 5,600. So you've got to base your number based on 320 patrols, times a rate you believe is correct for labor, and then include a rate that you believe for vehicle maintenance, and get that number. If they want more than 320, they're gonna have to pay for more, and that's their own choice based on
So
their
what do they
change order,
basically-
internal approved funding approval.
They're basically not
So
doing
it's more
Sundays.
you need to just change this, kind of this item cost breakout,
Right. 320
to say,
patrols.
this is what
at
it
the
costs us
individual
per
officer's
patrol.
rate Plus the mileage.
Right, but we're not just gonna pay the officer rate, we have to pay our total cost for
Well,
the
I'm saying
officer.
total cost per officer, so the officer's base salary plus benefits plus.
Right, and if that's
Right,
about
everything that
$30
goes
an
Kind of
hour,
like a
that's.
prevailing wage rate.
Right, but even
Breakout.
jumping that to $30 an hour is gonna double their number, and then we have to add the expense of the vehicle to it, which we haven't considered before.
It's gonna be the average officer
Right.
cost, because it's not always going to be the base officer that's out there either.
Well, and I also think, part of it is, you can't do it without a vehicle. So paying a vehicle, like a mileage rate, doesn't cut it, because that presumes a vehicle. At some point, we have to buy a vehicle, otherwise, and the other idea is, when they want 2 patrols, one in the evening, one in the morning, that's 2 different officers. So I can't hire a guy to work 30 minutes a day, no benefits, just come in for, so there's a bigger cost associated with, it's nice to have the manpower, but that manpower, as you're saying, there's a bigger expense to the car and to the officer than just those 30 minutes. And I would go with the idea that it's not just the 30 minutes that our calculation's based on, it's what it costs for us to put the guy and the car out there.
The comparable is they could pay for a detail. This is the cost for a detail officer.
With the 4-hour minimum at
Because it's
$50 an
not
hour
just
is
that,
$200 a
it's like
trip.
you're saying,
Right.
taking from the staff that is already minimally staffed to cover the needs of the town. Which, I see your point, plus the vehicle wear is a little different than just driving roads in many cases.
Even.
I'm all for you coming up with what you think it is, but that's how they're gonna wanna see it, is a unit cost rate.
Even 320 visits out there at $30 a visit for officer expense, it would be $9,600. And if we threw 3,400 in for vehicle, for mileage even, that still brings it up to 13,000. So I think, that's a minimum 13,000. And if they want more visits, we go up from there, but I think that's a fair number for the visits.
If this does, come to fruition, I would like, ask you to consider putting that into the new vehicle account as an offset, so that, when we get to like every third year, there's a vehicle. I think there's other things you could probably use the money for, but that's just a suggestion.
Is this just a general fund deposit when we receive these payments, or is this, so it's not already defined as a revolving account or something?
It doesn't go
that-
in an administrative account, which
Well, I don't
you
wanna-
have.
We're
So-
already planning to put a vehicle into the account every
That is our. game
periodical.
plan. Right. The
So,
initial
if-
budget did not show that because
Right.
we were trying to figure out where our baseline is. The capital was going to come in kind of like as we saw the budget picture improve, because there are some other, capital items that still need to be added to
And
that.
that's what I mean, capital,
Yeah.
not the
Right.
police budget.
Right, but if we're gonna try to, instead of putting a capital every year, we're gonna try to put the funds for a police car in the budget. And if we do that, we need to take funds like this and put these back into the general fund that we'd be able to do that from, instead of, if that's where he's going.
So once you confirm that we resolve this contract, then we can work
Right.
towards
We're looking at-
presenting a revolving
Mhm.
fund that takes these funds and focuses them strictly on vehicle maintenance and replacement.
Right, when you look into
Well, I
your
would just say replacement.
when you look into your local
Okay,
receipts
I
and you
mean-
see that number, you know what it goes to.
You never know what happens though, if somebody says you don't get a car this year, you might want that maintenance fund. So, I hear you, I just wouldn't wanna lock you down is all, I mean, but I see the whole benefit of
I think it has to go to
vehicles,
town
that's what
meeting
it's for.
anyway, to set the account.
Right. Just my thoughts.
Okay.
Okay, the second thing is the K-9 program. So these are just some excerpts from the Stanton Foundation K-9 grant website. Basically, what we have is, okay, you need a copy?
Yeah, thank you.
Basically, I've been waiting to approach the K-9 program until the contract gets signed, because it's a concern. There's gonna be a new agreement for a K-9 officer. So before I ever even thought to come to you to ask about a K-9 program, I was waiting for that. But what I'm concerned about is the grant period. So you can apply for the grant, and if you look on page 2, the first 2 steps regard what you have to do to apply. There's some other steps, and then number 3 is if they award you the grant, then you have to go back and you have to formalize the grant and accept it. So what it says to me is that we can apply for the grant, but then we can decide down the road that we're not gonna have a K-9 program and not accept the grant. So that would allow me to get the paperwork done and get us in the ballgame, so that whatever lag time exists, if the contract gets signed, if the Board of Selectmen agrees to the program, then we have some basis of funding, and then you can agree to accept it, or you can deny it, and we don't get the program, but I'd like to at least be moving forward in that direction. So what I'm basically asking is for permission to pursue the grant, not with no obligation to accept it, just simply to apply for it.
I would
Board
make a
members?
motion to give the chief of police permission to pursue the K-9 grant,
Okay.
Stanton Foundation grant.
Do I have a second?
This is just to get the ball rolling. We'd still have to approve it before we move. I'm not convinced we need a K-9 in town, and I'm not convinced it's something we should be taking on. But if so if we're gonna address that later, that's fine. We can let this move forward for now. Like I said, you don't have to take it.
Right.
So I'll second the motion. I think we still need more discussion about K-9s to decide if we're gonna go that way or not. I'm not convinced that there's a need. It can't be brought in, outsourced when it's required, and how often we'd really need that source. There will be an expense for us to continue a dog and an officer for the dog that's trained for the dog, training for that officer and the dog, probably beyond the grant. There'll be costs that would stay with the town. And I'm not sure if it's something we want to move into now or not, that's all.
Fair enough.
But I have the second of the motion for you, so
Okay.
we'll see from there.
Discussion?
You have audience
Yep,
discussion.
Claire?
Could we have more information as to how much the grant is and what does it cover?
Sure.
Like an explanation about it?
Sure. The basics are that the grant covers the purchase of the dog, the training for the dog, the overtime for the officer while they're in training to be replaced on shift, and a kennel, a cage at the officer's house, certain equipment. And basically that's it. Oh yeah, the cage for the car, so the upfitting of the car. And I think there's a maximum in there somewhere in the vicinity of $30,000 or $33,000. And you have to be able to get all that stuff with that money.
Is there a dollar fee, dollar amount on the grant?
Right, I think it's in the vicinity of 30,000, a little bit more than 30,000, if you pursue all avenues. And this would be contingent upon the successful certification of a canine that's also narcotics trained.
So if all that stuff is paid for, it sounds like there'll be negligible expense incurred for us to maintain a dog after that.
Right.
Vet visits
Well, they
and food and
require,
things, but.
they require, I think, the first year of food and insurance be paid for by the grant. We've, not to get too far ahead, we've already secured a vet who will do everything above the cost of insurance for free. And then that's kind of standard, I think, in different agencies.
And we'd have to still see how it impacts our town's insurance if we have a dog, and there's other things to look
There's
at,
many,
but
yes.
I'm just,
Many things.
so kinda get ready to wow us with why we need a dog before we go there, that's all.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Oh, the other thing is, you said the cage for the car.
Right.
Does that mean that you would use one of our 6 cruisers?
No. Well, that would be up to the Board of Selectmen, but my thought would be to privately, or not, to fundraise the purchase of a car. So I wouldn't be asking to convert one of our cars, and I would imagine.
I believe we still have a random bylaw from town that prohibits animals from being in town vehicles. I'm not kidding.
Oops.
We'll have to fix that if we move forward with this.
Yeah, oh, yes,
So-
just saying it's.
Even if it's just that caveat though, unless it's a certified canine unit with the police, or Dalmatian for the fire department.
I'm just, it's out there, so it's one of the things
No,
we
you're
should
right, it would
address
be
to
just another.
something else to
eye to
address
dot,
in the process.
T to
that's all.
cross.
Otherwise, we'll hear about it, and there's hypocritical selectmen out there.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. I'm in favor.
All right,
All right.
good luck, chief.
Thank you.
Thank you,
sir.
Chief.
Good luck.
This is this placeholder, so I don't use my spots. I keep flipping back and forth every meeting, so I'm getting smarter at it. Get this page of calculations and start again. Never know, we need a scratch book here. I suppose if I kept my tablet out and powered up,
Sorry.
I don't have a calculator in the other.
Okay.
I don't mind shorthanded numbers.
Bit of a wrong tab.
I don't know.
Yep. To the,
Yeah, so we received a proposal for continued retainer with D. Barre Law Offices as our legal counsel. They're asking for an increase in the retainer from $550 per month to $650 per month beginning July 1st, 2018. They say they definitely put in their time this year with the union negotiations and continuing and ongoing rates. So asking for your approval for the updated retainer increase and extension of the contract with D. Barre.
Do you know when the last time they made an increase like this?
Well, I think it's annually.
when was
I think it
it?
goes up minimally $25, $50.
Your opinion, Andrew?
I believe he's been a great asset to us in the 6 months that I've been here, especially all the issues that I've had to deal with him on. And
Just one or two.
just a few.
The contract looks reasonable.
Yes, yep. So I would endorse.
I'd make a motion then that we approve the retainer increase of $650 and approve the renewal of the contract.
Okay, do I have a second? I will second
Sure, second it.
it. Okay, discussions, did you have anything you wanted to?
No, I just wanted to keep reading, just double check some things.
Okay.
Dramatic pause, that's all.
Yeah. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Charlie, can I get your signature? Ask for just the chairman's signature on it.
Andrew's the
Those the
procurement
minutes there?
man. What does Charlie have to sign?
That's just how
Can
he
get
put it on
busy
his
on
agreement. He asked for the chairman of the board of selectmen.
Kick it back to him. He's trying to put a lot of weight on you. Make it all on Andrew's shoulders. That's why we
I
pay
think-
him the
I think
whatever
technically-
we pay him.
I think technically the board of selectmen hires legal and labor counsel. So,
Good answer.
We approve it.
okay.
Okay.
I'm just having fun with Andrew.
I'm gonna have to call Fred in here to for an
Hey,
opinion.
tell me, how does this really work? I put his name there because he's supposed to sign it.
Okay, we have,
17th today, right?
16th.
16th?
Yep.
you all set? Update on senior work-off regulations, Andrew?
Yeah, so Faye put together some updates to the senior tax work-off program regulations in accordance with the Municipal Modernization Act, which, primarily it's just a couple of minor things. Really, there's the increase in the general requirements, which increases the hourly rate to be more in compliance with the Massachusetts minimum wage. So it brings it basically up from $8 to $10 per hour. But then also increases the maximum credit for participants from $750 per year to $1,500 per year per household. Also change the eligibility date based off the fiscal year to based off the calendar year. And that's just more in line with the way that the program's administered, since the end of the year is when, or beginning of the year is when the program actually starts, rather than having the eligibility in the middle of the year. And then also included in the application process that they are required to submit a query check prior to the start of the program. And I know that, Matt, you had suggested a couple of additional edits
Yeah.
as well. So.
Under the general requirements, and it may fit well under 3D participant eligibility, we probably should put in there a bullet that identifies their status with the current collector, just to probably work with the treasurer to make sure we have the proper terminology related to, are you in good standing, are you in a payment plan, whatever that says that she can take this, we can abate this because it's not in a current lien or something that affects the legalities of our ability to work against.
Where did you want that? You were thinking?
Under eligibility.
I think it might fall under 3D. Yeah,
Four.
general requirements 3, and under 4, miscellaneous provisions was writing in there that annually, maybe by the end of January or early February, so we can include it in the budget process. The Board of Selectmen should vote on a cap for the total amount of dollars we can apply to this.
So I'm wondering if maybe that should just be something we'll put under our financial policy rather than the program. But, I mean, we.
I just thought if we put it in here, when someone goes to read it,
And they wonder
it
why they
reminds
cap it,
you of,
why they
right,
cap it at 10.
how one affects the other. And not number of participants, but dollar value, which means we would want to round it up to the maximum annual. So if it's 1,500 a person, then maybe 10 people, we can allow $15,000 to be abated against next year's taxes, so that the assessor can plan for it, and when we build our budget, it falls into that
The only.
line item that they have for abatements or whatever.
The only comment I have, back at that is, it was, when it was voted in at town meeting in 2007, 2008, it was voted in with a cap of $7,500. The program was voted in with that cap specifically, if that makes sense. So I think we would have to go back to
Okay.
town meeting vote
Mm-hmm.
to change that figure. Because right now,
Okay, I think we probably should put that on the agenda for the annual town meeting also, so that
Right,
we can
to
bring that to the
increase
town. To remove the
Remove the arbitrary cap.
actual value of 7,500 in that bylaw and just identify it as the Board of Selectmen will make that decision annually in the budget process. That way, we never have to keep revising the bylaws, time outgrows the $7,500 cap.
yeah, I mean, I don't know where originally the 7,500 comes from, because the assessors, this comes out of the assessor's overlay account. So it's not that, this money is budgeted for.
It's not budgeted unless we create that cap, and then it's budgeted based on the number we create. They're planning for a certain amount when they see that, right now, they see only 7,500, so they don't have to plan for more. But if we think 10 people might participate, well, that's now 15,000, not 7,500. Because we just gave each individual an increase by an additional 100% of that cap. So individuals were at 750, they're now at 1,500.
Yep.
So we've limited the number that could participate by not increasing the cap.
Right, we have never turned anyone away. Just so you know, in the years that, for 6 years now that I've been a part of this program, we have yet to turn anyone away because there isn't availability.
I understand, but it was brought to my attention that this is something that should annually be addressed by the Board of Selectmen through the budget process. Because, and I would have to review further, I believe state regulations generally state that it's a Board of Selectmen's job to make that cap number. So, whether we did it through town vote and kind of just took it out of the Board of Selectmen's hands, I don't know if that's an appropriate application. And by creating a number that we choose, we are budgeting for that. It's not a, you have the number in the budget sheet work right now where the assessor says, plan for this, in abatements, et cetera. This is an abatement, not an overlay or an unexpected, so it's a.
Well, there's another part of this factor, if I just could quick. We have to pay the town's portion of Medicare on this.
Mhm.
So there's an additional cost to the town, beyond giving the abatement and not having that tax revenue.
Correct, but
So
we.
I think that we're, you know, what I can see is that, you know, if we don't address the issue of the abatement line and that you guys having some control over that, that now we've reduced the amount of people eligible for this program because because right now we're set at a cap of $7,500.
Right.
So we've increased the ability of people to get additional funds, but we're still limited by that cap. So if we need an ability for the board to be able to raise that cap up.
That's what I think. I think it should be more of a living budget type thing rather than locked in at a town vote every 5 or 10 years. I could be wrong, but it's a budget.
Certified by the passage of the budget. So.
Yeah.
So we
You
could
just
mark
make-
that and put it in.
So those are my 2 recommendations on this, is just make sure they're clear under the collector's rules and regs about, and then determine a cap.
We could try to present that at town meeting.
Do you know when the overlays reported, off the top of your head? Is that a fall reporting to DOR, or is that a?
That is, yeah, that's the end of the calendar year is normally when the overlays are reported.
The only reason why I'm asking, because if you're gonna, we may need to look at what the opportunity times are for the applicants if we're setting caps. You know, when are we setting caps? Are we setting caps
Yeah, 'cause
before it starts, mid-program? You get what I'm trying to see?
Overlays are for the fiscal year prior to the one we would be setting the cap on.
Right, so that's.
So they're
basically-
reporting overlays for a fiscal year, say in November, And then in January, February, we'll have that information to make a decision for the next fiscal year's expected cap.
But this runs calendar,
Because you're ending it,
because they have to
You're
get a
ending-
W,
you're
they have to
basically-
get a W-4.
yeah, you're basically ending it
W2.
in November. For the most part, you're writing it in November, so then you're reporting those numbers on the overlay as part of the tax rate.
Yeah, we reported at the beginning of November to the assessor what we've had for applicants. That way, the first billing in January, tax billing, when the real tax bills are going out, not the estimated, it shows on those
Right, takes
tax
up-
bills.
It comes off the real.
So we just need to choose a
I just
December
need-
date to
I
make
guess
that
I just need
decision,
to
not
know
a
when-
January or February date.
I just need to know when the overlay reporting is, that's all. We can talk to Eileen and work
We'd be
that
better
out.
off setting it at the beginning of the year, and then you know how many people you can take on in the program.
Okay,
That's all I mean, we can
Yeah.
take the previous year's
Yeah.
numbers and then plan for the next year.
Right.
Okay.
okay. Claire, you had a question?
Yeah, Faye, you said that you have to pay for Medicare?
Mhm.
Why do you have to pay for Medicare? I'm not understanding.
Well, I don't wanna
Yeah,
tell
that
you
would-
that I know the answer to that. However, the collector
Because
treasurer.
I pay for my Medicare.
Yeah, the treasurer collector had let us know that, say an applicant comes in and does the maximum amount and they are to receive $1,500 credit.
Yeah.
Well, they don't truly get a $1,500 credit. They get a $1,500 credit minus Medicare, which means that they make a Medicare contribution and the town is obligated to make a Medicare contribution as well. So it's minus that Medicare.
I'm just wondering why.
They're essentially,
Hmm.
they're essentially employees.
Correct.
So when they're done, they have to go through payroll. So part of that payroll process is to take, they're obligated to pay into Medicare. So the only two impacts on us are the deduction from the abatement costs, but also paying that employee's share into Medicare, as we would deduct it from a regular employee's
Mhm.
second.
It's still an earned income.
So in the end, at the end of the year, you would, I'm thinking of myself, you would be able to claim that as a medical insurance that you're paying.
Right.
Yeah, I
Right, you
don't-
would get a W-2 from the
Mhm.
town that stated that you
Yeah.
Mhm.
contributed that amount.
Mhm.
That confused me.
Yeah, this is
So,
something
in other
that's new.
words, you owe everything you owe the federal government anyway. And it's not just Medicare. When you get a W-4, it says it right here in this thing you just sent to us. U.S. Internal Revenue Service ruled that the abatement amount is included in the taxpayer's gross income for both federal income tax and Federal Insurance Contribution Act, FICA taxes. Seniors accepted under this program will be required to fill out a W-2 form to submit with their federal tax filings. So you owe your portion of your federal tax as if it was an income. The municipality owes for Social Security and Medicare taxes, which would be our matching contribution that we owe the federal government.
Yeah, we don't do
But we
Social
pay that out of
Security.
the overlay. I'm just telling you what you just submitted to us
Yeah,
and said we owe.
That Medicare amount does not come out of the overlay. That comes out of our general insurance, according to Nancy.
Then you'll have to add that to your edit list. No, the employee share of Medicare will be charged to the applicant. The Medicare and Social Security is a matching contribution from the employer. So we still owe our matching contribution.
Mhm.
They owe just their portion. So right here, you have that says the employee's share of Medicare will be charged to the applicant, thus the wage earner. So I believe that's, I don't know the difference in that 7.25 versus Social Security and Medicare and what percentage that is, but
Right, it's like, basically, you don't, for the $1,500 that you make, you don't get $1,500 off your taxes, it ends up being like
Yeah, I don't remember the number.
14 something,
Mhm.
or whatever the actual number is, but it's less the amount contributed to Medicare.
agreed.
all set with that one for now? Okay, good.
Do you guys want that on your next meeting agenda, or,
Yeah, why don't we?
okay? Because this program is starting up.
Yeah. Okay. We have a discussion on the agenda anyway for on transfer station agreement. I don't know, Andrew, you want to start that, or?
Sure.
I understand
So-
you've started some research on this issue.
Right, well, I know in 6 months, we're gonna be, you know, we kinda are at a crossroads with the current agreement where, you know, we have our current agreement with Solid Waste Solutions that runs our transfer station. We have the option of tacking on an additional 2 years onto that agreement. But I know that Selectman O'Sullivan has been looking into some, or has been pushing for some options to look at the town taking over the recycling center instead. So I've just been trying to do as much as I can as far as a cost-based analysis on what it would be if the town was to take it over. And I'm looking at other towns that are comparable, and I haven't gotten a lot of information back from other towns yet, other than what I've been able to grab off of town reports and budget documents. But it seems that pretty much across the board, most places, they pretty much even, you know, they run the transfer station at
Level funding.
level funding, yeah. So I was able to get some information from Athol and Groton so far. I've put out a couple of feelers to a couple other towns, but haven't heard anything back yet. So I don't know. I know it was brought up at the DPW meeting, and that Jason was gonna go out to Groton to speak with them about the operation of theirs and see if this is a feasible option within the next, you know, to implement within the next 6 months.
Do you want to add anything at this point?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I don't think it's a debate whether or not it's feasible to run this thing in the next 6 months. Quite frankly, it's plug and play. We have containers. We have containers for our commingled recycles. We have a metal pile. We have sheds that are established. We already own all the equipment. It's a matter of staffing the facility and simply determining where we're gonna take the trash for incinerator or for dumping, or however we choose. And if we choose to start separating our recyclables, determine the best value of separation to begin with in the future. But I would say initially, we'd want to maintain and run it the first year as it is. It's really not that difficult to staff an employee or two to put containers on trucks and drive them to facilities. All of our DPW personnel are CDL licensed. As I assume, new people we would hire for that would be CDL licensed. It's really, some people I think is it a daunting thing to take over a business. I've been running my own business and done different businesses for, you know, well over 25 years now, and it's really not a difficult task. We're doing our best, getting Jason, I think Joe Rogowski said from the commission, he go as well. And if I am around in Groton, I'll meet as well to go over these items and get a good idea of how they've established it, what they're doing. I know the separation is 3 color glasses, clear plastic, opaque plastic. They separate cardboard, and I think they separate, the rest of the paper goes together, but we'll find out exactly what they separate, what the value of each of those items is separated, and hopefully get an estimate of their tonnage of each of these items. So if we take their total tonnage of the year, we can extrapolate what percentage of their total tonnage is each one of these specific items. We could put that same ratio to our recycling and predict what we would have of each of these specific things if we separated, and have a good idea of our separated value in the future, and look at our value of the co-mingle by the ton, which we should be able to get the tonnage of co-mingle that we ship out now. And we can determine the value of that co-mingle and figure out, if it is more valuable separated, what's the most valuable? Maybe some things aren't worth separating, like maybe some things are. These simple things to look into in the next few months, which I'm starting to look into, and Jason is gonna go out and talk with them. We can also find out what they use for their recycling facilities. They're willing to give us a lot of information from Groton anyhow, from what they set up and what they do, and we can find out if they think certain packaging is worth it or not worth it. For example, rather than haul a container as they do now full of commingled recyclables, which is a relatively light container, you could take, for example, plastic, which is, you know, a lot of volume of air, and pack it and bundle it and ship 10 times the volume on one truckload. So you can get your fuel costs way down, your transport costs, and your vehicle wear and tear costs down by bundling these things. You know, certainly would think cardboard and paper are smart to have bundled. Plastic is probably smart to have bundled. Glass, I would think, I don't know, this is just pure speculation, but I would assume glass is ground up, so it fits in containers better, because most of what we're shipping is airspace, and we're wasting fuel to ship these things now. So as far as separating, we're gonna find out the value when they're separate, but we're also gonna have a distinct savings in fuel and transport and labor costs for, you know, cutting our trips down, but probably by at least down to 20% of what they are now for our trips. So I think there's a good savings by separating. But as far as taking the facility over, I think we should commit to move forward in taking the facility over. I think we should commit to doing our best estimates, put this in the budget. Roughly, I've talked with Andrew what our actual costs are when you consider benefits and things for an employee, and we're looking at probably $50,000 to $55,000 total cost. So if we had 2 employees, we have a $110,000 cost. If we, let's say, a $40,000 equipment maintenance and fuel cost for the equipment we have there, we'd be looking at a $150,000 expense. Sticker fees, certainly I don't want to see them at $100. I don't think there's any reason to keep them on that high. I'd like to bring them down where they're affordable and get more people to sign up. And the unforeseen things, which will be included in my numbers before I'm done, is how much the town is throwing away by tonnage that the DPW picks up every week. That's labor and then time, and it's paying for the tons that they pick up on the side of the roads and in the woods and places. And that's gonna be a significant dollar amount as well when we put the figures together. And quite frankly, we wouldn't have a company that's willing to take this and run it unless it was profitable. It seems ridiculous to me to continue to pay nearly $100 for a sticker and $2 a bag. It's making it unaffordable for a lot of people in town. And I think it's, you know, in our best interest to take control of this landfill, transfer station, and put a couple more people on the payroll so we have some more employees, give a couple more local jobs. And I think once we have our own full-time personnel there, we can now run it 3 or 4 days a week instead of just 2 days. Instead of just Tuesday, Saturday, we could do, you know, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, but pick 3 or 4 days, I would think. And also, without really extending any more costs, I think we can, oh well, there you go.
Dixon engineer.
You know, to estimate the tonnage, we should be able to come up with a close approximation per bag. And what I've heard from Groton, and my experience was it was less, but that it's about $1 per bag to throw the trash away. So the bags could go back down to $1 or $1.25. And the bag cost is designed to cover the tipping fees. So what we're looking for is sticker fees and recycling to cover our cost of $150,000 to have 2 employees and some equipment down there. I think we should be able to recoup. I would think if we sold 2,000 stickers at $20 a sticker, $40,000, leaves us shooting for $110,000 in recycling, and I don't think that's an unrealistic number at all. We'll have better numbers when we talk to Groton and look at other towns for what they're doing. But I see no reason we shouldn't commit to moving forward with this. And, you know, without some more direction from us and through the DPW commission, which we also sit on, without some more direction to move forward, instruct people to move forward, we're not gonna get very far with this, and I think we should look ahead now. We're 6 months out. It's a good time to, or 5.5 months out, start moving towards this.
Okay.
And we'll get the numbers in where they come in, and we can adjust our budget as need be to make sure these forecasts are balanced. And I think
Mhm.
if we're anticipating the revenues from the recyclables aren't enough to match $110,000, then maybe we'd have to stay at $2, or maybe the stickers be 30 or 35 instead of 20, but they certainly shouldn't be closer to 100 as they are now.
Okay.
So I just, I did a little bit of, just kind of research on what I could find, what I could find out of what the impacts would be on some of this stuff. And so this last year, fiscal year 17, we had 300 total tons of recycling. And
How many? 300?
300 total tons between glass and cardboard. So if you commingle total, I think it came out to like 130 and 17, or 130 for paper, 170 for glass. This didn't include metal recycling. No, I only had enough time to get these numbers together. I estimated, correct me if I'm wrong, because I was looking at really old rates on this stuff, but recycling average is about $70 per ton for.
I don't
Okay.
know we'll find
Okay.
out.
I found an
So-
old number that said that average Massachusetts, it was like $70 per ton, but this was back to like 2010. So it could be up or low, higher or lower than that. So total on, just based off of those, it was about $21,000 in income, based off of what was reported to us on recycling fees between those two last year. Municipal solid waste in tons was 814 tons of municipal solid waste that was removed. Again, went with any estimate around us I could find. I found one that was about $75 a ton, and I think that one was back in about 2010 as well. So total tipping fees, using that average, is about $60,200 on average. So whatever the expenses are, and the wages, add that, it's close to about $200,000 total. So then the sticker and bag fees would be what you would need to offset whatever the difference between those are. But then again, those are really rough numbers just based on what I can find.
Yep. So they didn't, the other things we have down there for recycling, they take tires, they take, I don't know how valuable appliances are, not very, I don't think, but tires have a value to them. And the scrap metal pile certainly has a value to that.
Right.
Even in a low end of probably $70 a ton, and metal for a while was up over 200 just a couple of years back, so that fluctuates greatly. So we'll have to get a better idea on exactly what all those things are. And then, we say glass, and the commingle isn't just glass. There's aluminum, there's tin, there's glass, different colors of glass, and there's different plastics, all in there. And I can assure you, when you go from commingle to separate them, that the value more than doubles. Let's see, if it were 170 or 300 tons of those commingled, 6 tons a week, so 12,000 pounds a week. Sounds like a lot, but it sounds about right for down there, I think.
What's the application process with the DEP, time-wise?
I'll have to look into that. So I had, so would you say that we currently probably have about 2,000 people that have stickers?
I think Fay said we had about a third of the town, so roughly 1,300, 1,400. of course, at $100 a sticker, that's $140,000.
Well, I think that was when they were about $50 a sticker.
I expect we'll get about 2,000, if not more, when we drop sticker prices down to a reasonable rate. I consider the rate for stickers right now to be very unreasonable.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I guess one other option, and I'm just throwing it out there, if we kind of look at everything and we go, hey, you know, at the end of the day, this might not be profitable for a few years, maybe we go back to Solid Waste Solutions and ask to renegotiate the contract.
Absolutely against it. I want to commit to this, and I want to find a way to make this work. By your numbers, we're estimating that there was a $60,000 expense for them to dump the trash,
Yes.
and a $20,000 revenue off of recycling. That leaves them $40,000 in the hole for running the business.
Right. But that they're making,
But they also have how many employees? At least 2 down there?
There's one.
one
Yeah,
employee.
I think
sometimes
there's one.
two, sometimes.
There's
So
one
if they-
down low and one up high. Every
Gen-
time I go in,
Sad.
Generally-
His girlfriend or something.
There's generally 2 people down there, I believe, but even if we said they only dedicated 1 person full-time average between moving, because they have to move these containers, if they're moving 60 tons a week of recycling, that's probably, I mean, that's gonna be several Connexes. So they've gotta be making, trash runs, and they've gotta be, 814 tons. I would like to know how many containers they're moving in a week, but they've got to be at least 1 full-time employee. And so that will put them from 40,000 hole to about 95,000 in the hole. And they're recouping that through bag fees at $2 a bag and through stickers. So if they sold 1,000 stickers at $100 a piece, it's $100,000. They're already $5,000 in the black without the bag fees. And when you add the bag fees into that at $2 per bag, we could estimate how many bags make up a ton, but I would say the average bag is probably someplace around 30 pounds. I think that's a reasonable amount of weight,
Mhm.
so 66 bags for a ton, right?
Mhm.
That'd give them $132, and they're paying out an estimated, we said 70? That gives them a $60 a ton profit on nearly 100 tons, so it gives them another, 6,000, or if I'm doing that right. It gives them another good chunk of money of profit. They're making profit. If they weren't, they wouldn't be there.
I'm just wondering.
And quite frankly, if it comes down to they were making $11,000 profit, I don't believe for a second they'd run the business for $11,000 profit. I think you'll find that these estimates are all very low, and there's more money here than we're realizing. No business is gonna come in and dedicate somebody for a whole year and put all these expenses to try to turn $11,000 a profit, and have to maintain their vehicles and their other expenses, which we haven't included in here.
Right.
So that these numbers simply don't add up to what they're clearly spending there.
Right, I'm just wondering whether or not maybe their recycling costs, they're getting more out of it because as a private entity with multiple stakeholders, they might be able to leverage a lower cost or a higher cost per ton of their recycling and a lower cost per ton for the municipal solid waste disposal. It's just a consideration.
I don't know. But I think clearly the numbers, as you run them like that, there's no money in that. And why would a business be there if there's no money in that? But we'll get our numbers back when we talk to other towns. I'm confident we can make it work. And if that means 1 employee instead of 2, we can do 1 employee. 2 makes it very easy down there. But certainly 1, and if we do put this under the DPW, Jason's indicated he would take that on under his duties. You assign it to him, assign him an extra employee, and it doesn't have to be 1 person. So if they're out sick, we have someone else go over to it. You can keep the facility open, and we can certainly figure out the hours it needs to run and have it open more for the town, and hopefully at a lower cost to the town people. And I think that's important, and as we lower the cost to the town people, I think our stickers are gonna go up, and I think our trash dumping in the woods and in, other properties that DPW picks up will go down. So I will try to bring all these costs into effect probably within a month and get a better number for you, get a better idea of what we're paying now, for what we pick up and how much time we spend picking it up, and come up with costs for that as well. Then we just have to really look at where our sticker and bag prices have to be to make this work. And if we know our tonnage of trash and we know what our tipping fee is already, that's one of the questions I'll have for Groton, how many
Mhm.
bags in a ton? And we'll get a straight answer. And we'll know right where our bag should be, so our tipping fee is very, very, very close to what it costs. And if we have one employee, and it costs us $55,000, and we sell $40,000 in stickers, then we only need 15,000 back from recycling efforts to make this work. It's livable within our budget if we have to take that for 1 year at a $15,000 expense to take it back, and that would probably be offset by the DPW's pickup that they do.
The one thing I would really like us to look at financially is professional licensure, increase insurance costs, engineering or administrative support that may be required. Things that many times are more in kind of what Andrew was saying, because a company holds multiple sites, they have one office with all those people, and their name is on each site, and then they can pay the lower guy to run the site, or the guy with the license that says I can do this job, or the engineer's stamp that says I can tell you if this is right or wrong, is sitting in their office. Those are little hidden costs that come up throughout a permitting process that I would like to know those numbers before I will be willing to go too far in committing to this. I do see the general statement you're saying, and I do think there is a way, but there's a lot of unknowns that, through my experience, which is somewhat limited, but I've done a few projects that have involved DEP, things can add up quickly when it comes to, we need an engineer to do this, we need someone to do this, we need someone to do that. And I know we have some pretty well-educated people working for us, but that doesn't necessarily mean it fits the definition for a solid waste transfer facility. So per
just
the
gonna-
state's,
Right, so you're looking for
Definitely.
insurance costs, what other specific concerns? Like, I'll address these.
professional licensure, what do we have to have on staff that puts their name on it and says, I'm the point of contact with DEP regarding whatever happens at this transfer station? The engineering support cost for permitting, maintaining permitting, responding to DEP complaints about improper paperwork. That's the other thing. There's a lot of paperwork administration that I would be concerned with keeping up on. It's not that it can't be done, but it does require staying on top of it so that you don't become we gotta watch that place.
Right, part of any trucking job, and any trucker should be prepared to have their logbook, any kind of bill of lading for what you're hauling. And they should be getting receipts every time they go to a scale and dump, so we should have record from no matter what it is, what our scaled amount is, come back on a literal written ticket. And how we log that ticket and where we record it is pertinent
Right.
to this.
Whole different industry, but similar to how the ambulances get inspected in their records and everything, and how wastewater treatment facilities get its inspected with there, and the
Yeah.
water department gets theirs. They have their own records they have to maintain, so that's why I meant, we have people that know how to do this,
These are all-
but we are adding a whole new major level of paperwork to someone that we're asking a lot of already, when it comes to the DPW superintendent.
Okay.
Simple enough to get answers for.
Okay. Kathy, you had a comment?
Well, I just wanted to ask you, like Matt said, you're putting a lot more on the DPW super. Is he gonna do this for nothing?
Mm-hmm.
He will do this for nothing.
It's because he loves his town.
I have no comment.
Okay. Okay?
I just, another facet of this is the involvement of the Board of Health. It's not
Right.
only the Board of Selectmen and the DPW, it would be the Board of Health too. I believe they are the holder of the site assignment on that location.
Board of Health is a regulatory agency that maintains whoever is the holder of that site assignment is doing their job.
I believe they are the holder of that, is
I
what
do
I'm
not
saying.
believe they can be. because they regulate it. They cannot regulate themselves without it being a direct conflict of interest. So, when I looked it up, I believe originally, when you go to the DEP, they have this whole list of where are all the transfer stations, where are all the landfills, and who are your point of contacts. And after a year, I still saw that waste management was listed and not solid waste solutions, so I don't know if it was ever properly updated. But that is supposed to identify, see, the town is the holder of the site assignment, because we now own the property that is site assigned. We, is this the right word, delegated that authority to the contractor, Solid Waste Solutions, to use that site assignment within the regulations that the state allows. So we hold it as a town, not the Board of Health, the town. The Board of Health is just a regulatory agency that says whoever's using that transfer station is gonna do it according to the state regulations and any local bylaws that may also apply. And it's their job to make sure, so they would be our watchdog even if we did it internally. If DPW took it over, they would be constantly dealing with the Board of Health, because it's the Board of Health that's gonna say, you gotta get this inspection, you gotta submit this report. So they would still be very involved with everything going on, whether DPW takes it over, we just had another contractor. But I don't believe they actually are more than kind of like an authority having jurisdiction versus an owner of the site, or even an owner of this contract. Again, if we let them get too involved with ownership of this contract, we are allowing them to maintain a conflict of interest they shouldn't be given.
Because they receive grant money for some of the stuff that goes on down there currently. The Board of Health does. They get recycling grants.
That should be going through us, not them.
It's through the DEP.
Yeah, because the town applied for it. It's not the Board of Health applying for it. The Board of Health applied for the town to receive it, and they just brought it to the transfer station to have it used there, because that's what the grant was for. So it's not, but they did it on behalf of the town, not on behalf of the Board of Health. Because, again, we've got to be careful. The Board of Health cannot be both the regulator and the one they're regulating.
It's the same in any
So
aspect.
they
The building
cannot,
inspector
in other
can't
words, what I
inspect their
mean
own
is they
buildings.
can't say, here are the rules of the government on how to run a transfer station, and then write a contract and be the enforcer of the contract for a contractor to then do that. Because if they then start telling the contractor, no, I want you to do this on the site, or I want you to do that on the site, because the town wants a compost facility, or the town wants this, then the board is now telling the contractor to do something, and then telling him the guidelines, and that's too close. It's just so not within conflict of interest issues. You cannot be the regulator and the manager of a site.
Period. And that goes for any aspect of the government. You can't, as I said, a building inspector can't build a home in the town they're an inspector for and inspect it themselves. It's specifically forbidden.
That's weird.
You cannot be an inspector of your own work or your own.
And that's
facility.
generally the concern that would be raised by too much of that happening.
So if they're the overseer of the site, it will change.
Okay.
But other than that, I do want to continue pursuing this. I just want to make sure we cover all of the, kind of the office costs
Right.
that,
At this
Right.
point, from the
Okay, we can
100,000
agenda this.
foot point of view, it's,
Yeah.
you guys want to continue to pursue it.
This.
Faye also brought up, was it Faye? I think Faye brought up the point of we need to know the timeline on transferring ownership and how DEP goes through that process. We own it, but transfer of management of that site. I think it must go pretty quickly unless I don't understand how we went from waste management to solid waste solutions in 1 month. Because we only had a contract with solid waste solutions as of the 18th of June.
They would have had.
And on July 1st, they had it. with no
Unless-
contract in hand.
Yeah.
Well, under Article 6, it says the town will be the operator.
Okay, so we just gotta figure
So
that out.
basically, we
You're
are
right.
the
We just
operator
have to wait for
already.
the trigger
It's not
date,
changing.
so to speak.
Okay.
I hire a third party to do a waistband compliance report. But it states in this contract that we're still the operator, we're just hiring them to run it for us. We are officially the operator of the transfer station.
I think, Andrew,
Already.
we're trying to get information, all last week since this came up and, contacting Athol, and so we're just really waiting for people to give us what their real numbers are.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I've been just trying to back channel and find through municipal websites
Yeah.
what expense versus income has been. It's been kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes, some people will have reported a $10,000 like the highest income I saw was about $12,000 over that. That was a town of 11,000 people, where a town of 10,400 people had back in FY15 a positive of $8,700, but then the next 3 years saw major deficits. But that was, looking at it from the report standpoint, it's hard to tell exactly where, was it an increase in expenses, or was it a result in the loss of specific revenues based off of what purposes?
Or did they have a vehicle they had to replace, come up and had an expense? But let me be very clear. My intent is to run this as a level funded operation. So if we do find that the recycling does produce an abundance of cash, I would like to reinvest in the facility with better and different equipment and bring costs down to the town, not make this a source of revenue for the town. We've already proven that by making it more expensive, we're putting a burden on the DPW and we're putting an expense in the town. So I think we should commit to making this, this venture an affordable thing for the town, for the townspeople, not a capital point for us to make money. We have our taxes, we can work within our revenues, there's no reason we shouldn't. I don't want to look to increase revenues from this for the town. I want to make our best effort to estimate this at a level fund. And wherever the money comes out in the future, if that means we have and can use a second employee down there and the funds say we can afford it, we should do that. We should also be able to look at equipment down there and plan on maintaining or replacing equipment every so many years. So we're gonna hopefully learn where our numbers are very quickly and start to be able to build a capital plan for down there. You're gonna have to replace a loader, not that often, they last a long time. But there's gonna be maintenance, there's gonna be replacement. Containers need to be replaced, they do rust and rot out. We may switch for different containers when we go to crushing and packing
Yeah.
machines.
We got a grant for
Mattresses.
one container,
I
but
think it
for
was for
mattresses.
mattresses.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
it's just something to consider. And it's not till we get our first numbers in to get an idea of what's coming in now to estimate our budget as best we can to balance it for this. I'm not overly concerned if we miss the first year. If we miss by 10 or 15,000, we have to address free cash at the end of the year to fix it. We know where our stickers have to be the next year, or where our bags have to be next year to offset that. But I really want to move forward and do the best job we can do moving forward. I don't want to go another year of picking up trash on the side of the road and paying to dump trash in our own facility,
Do
which
we
is
know how much trash
ridiculous.
we're picking up right now?
I don't, I'll get the number. I will
I've
bring those
asked
numbers in.
Jason to provide me with the amount of trash that
Okay.
they dispose of and how much they pay Solid Waste Solutions for their own disposal. To basically set that as our baseline right now,
Mhm.
because we're not really at zero, we're at a negative, but that's
Right.
what baseline is. So,
We're at a negative, and that doesn't take into account how much time we're allocating. And once again, as the chief said, it's not just the person going out picking up that trash, it's our vehicle and equipment, and taking away from our other town requirements while that person is up picking up trash. So.
Okay, we'll keep this on the agenda, and
Yeah, I think we should just keep it on continuing. We can update it as we go.
Yep.
And I will endeavor to bring new information each time from this day forward. when
Okay,
do
well,
this.
we thank you for looking
Um,
into this.
This is,
Thank you.
this is gonna keep on top of my list.
Okay, we have a Council on Aging nomination.
Yeah, we received a letter from the Council on Aging, and they would like to nominate Stanley McNitus to replace the vacant seat of Thomas Mertzick. If you have any other questions, you can contact the board or council. I apologize.
Okay, what are the wishes of the board?
Make a motion to appoint Stanley McNitus as a full-time member of the Council on Aging. Is there a term with this?
It probably is whatever term Thomas Mertzick had.
To fulfill Thomas Mertzick's incomplete term?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I second the motion.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Thank you. Discussion on creating a holiday committee. I believe, Andrew, you had
Yep, so this was
some
kind
thoughts
of,
on this?
this was kind of part of my budget presentation, that I had, brought forward to the finance committee and, you guys, earlier. So annually, we've basically given about $1,500 per year that's kind of been earmarked for, as holiday decorations. And, I guess in past years, that's been kind of money that's gone toward, the Christmas and Barre event. And, you know, this last year we had some great success with running a Halloween event with the downtown area, and that was kind of funding that we took directly out of our budget, from the town administrator's budget to get that off the ground. And going forward, what I think that the best use of that line item would be to kind of reestablish that as a holiday committee that looks at how we can how we can kind of bring events all throughout Barre, so South Barre, Barre Commons, any other places where it would be feasible to host holiday events year round and not just to a non-town committee to use town funds. I just think it would be, you know, if we're going to assign $1,500 of taxpayer money, we should have a taxpayer-appointed board that is in charge of the dissemination of those funds. And I think that by having a committee that's kind of dedicated to, you know, making kind of a fun committee that still has a pretty important task, it's kind of a step in the right direction.
During our holiday, Halloween event, we did happen to come upon some of the Christmas and Barre people. I talked about how, you know, moving forward, maybe we need to establish this group, and some of the members of the Christmas and Barre seem pretty excited to, you know, have this established group. Not just for Christmas and Barre, but, you know, as like a holiday group, so. And I did get a response from one person that I did speak with asking if we've made any headway on that, and that they're definitely interested in joining part of that group.
How many people are we looking for the committee?
Say 7
Yeah,
at least.
I mean, I didn't really have a number in mind, but 7 would be I think would be a good start to try to recruit some people to be part of it.
I would just think, because if you're looking at different holidays, you may have people that are interested in different facets of the holidays, so you may get people that are really excited about the Christmas and Barre, you may get people excited about maybe this Halloween event, or maybe there's, you know, the parades or what have you.
But I don't think that it should necessarily be just kind of limited to those people. I think you need 7 core people who are gonna make the decisions, but be open to people coming in and participating.
Have a considered meeting schedule,
This is, I haven't really,
holiday schedules they want to look for, specific meeting for, how often. I mean, if we're going to ask people to commit to it, we've got to have an idea. We don't want to make this another committee that people just don't show up for, then it's, you know, really not a committee. So I'd like to see some sort of idea of how often you want to meet. You know, if it's going to be once a month, if it's going to be, you know, perhaps formal meetings once a month, and you'll set forth sub-meetings they want to have beyond that. But some sort of guideline to let people know what they're getting in for, in two when they sign up for it. And that might help people to know, what you're looking for before they jump into it. And obviously, the committee, I think it's a good idea, but I'd like to see a little more structure before we advertise it.
We would still need to draft a charge for this, obviously. I mean, this is really kind of like in the discussion phase,
Mhm.
just because I kind of threw it in as a preliminary budget line, preliminary budget goal, just to kind of talk about. But we
Just-
can kind of formalize something for consideration.
When it comes to the numbers, I almost suggest 5, not 7. And only because I think as you get bigger, what you actually do is you create little cliques where 4 always beats 3 and they always get their way and 3 end up never showing up anymore. 5 is a little harder to do. I'm not saying it isn't, but technically people have a greater chance of calling out concerns with not open meeting discussions. 3 people getting together as a quorum, where you got 7, 3 people can get together and then nobody sees that other person go talk to the 4th and they already have their vote ready when they come in. I'm just saying it can get a little clicky when you get too big of a committee that has voting power for money. Secondly, I would want to make sure that people understand, and this is, again, nothing personal with any individual, but I would not want the people that are on the Christmas and Berry committee think all of them are gonna land on this committee. Because I would purposely not want to bring that whole crew over. And again, it's nothing against them, but if you're trying to expand it to other holidays, they've got a routine and a budget they've been spending. If you move them all in and then you just take 1 or 2 more people to fill it in, it starts to create a little bit of a, we're not really expanding it, we're just giving them another name. Or they need to be committed to understanding that this is, again, reaching out to multiple holidays, encouraged to share the funds and the time. So I'm just saying these are concerns I have, and I would like people to know that I like the concept, but if somebody wants to be on this committee, they need to understand that it's a bigger thing than maybe what they have previously been doing.
I think the charge could probably outline
Mhm.
the, maybe holidays right now that we use, and maybe say something to the effect of, to include holidays X, Y, Z, but not to exclude any that come up. You know what I mean? That way they're charged with,
You have to come
you
up with
have to
something
come up
for
with something
these,
for these holidays.
not that,
Agreed, and that's not a bad idea. But I do think that's something we have to think about when you develop the charge. And when you talk to people about who wants to be on the committee, that they understand that this is bigger than you just taking what you used to do and bringing it to the committee.
We're gonna want that committee to solicit funds and fundraising to help fund larger things. If so, do we need to set an account up for that, and how do we handle that aspect of it?
that would be.
That's where Christmas and Berry becomes the Friends of the Holiday Committee.
Well,
And the
you
private,
could-
isn't
you
it
could-
similar,
But
you
you
said
see what I'm
there's
saying?
usually one.
1,500
But I
doesn't
think
go
you
that
could-
far, but
you
if
could
they
have
wanna
a
do,
gift account.
if they wanna do something larger,
How does
and they
that
have,
work?
find a way to
Yeah.
solicit funds.
There may be a way
It's
around
not
this too,
revolving.
and
Yeah, I don't think they can solicit funds, but if donations are made, I think it can go into a gift account. But what you have now is Christmas and Barre is operating, they're non-appointed.
Mhm.
They're their own committee, like quasi almost, and they're using town funds.
right,
So who on that committee
it's authorized.
is
to-
authorized to use those town funds is a lot of the concern.
But one thing you might want to think about, and could be kind of like the Arts Council or something, we could have it, this holiday committee could almost like issue a grant to this group or to that group. They could say, you can, we'll give you some money to this. It'd be kind of like, things.
Parks
that-
and Recs does that, right? With some of the
Yeah, there's a
cultural
lot of
events or
groups that
something,
do
they
that,
issue-
yeah.
Recreation Commission.
Well, that's kind of what I meant, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you
Recreation
can
Commission
say,
does that.
okay, we've got
Thank you.
X amount of
A
dollars
cultural
here, we're
council.
gonna give you
Cultural
a
council.
certain, you get,
Right.
come in,
And
you
we
apply
also-
for almost like applying
We
for.
also wanna be careful if we have obviously the Christmas and Berry Committee, that these two committees don't butt heads.
Right.
And, if we don't if we don't have at least some substantial involvement from that Christmas and Berry committee, we could have a conflicting committees, and have a horror show, which we don't want.
Right.
Well, I think from the members of the Christmas and Berry Committee that we've spoken to, that we've had contact with, they're excited about this committee. And I think this,
Is that because they all plan to be on the committee would be the,
Probably.
I mean, I know Matt said he didn't want that, but even if the whole
No,
committee
I'm just
stepped up and they
afraid-
wanted if they wanted to do the Halloween event because they were excited about it, I mean, I don't know if any of you were there, but the members were all there from Christmas and Berry, a lot of them that I'm familiar with, and they all
Mhm.
came up and said, this is great, we're so excited about this, and, that it's another event on the common, other than what they put on. So,
Mhm.
that's why I say, like, it may end up being all the Christmas and Berry people, I don't know, but
Right, and
if you
I
charge
don't wanna
them with.
knock the
Right.
individuals
I'm-
without
Yeah.
knowing.
right, I'm not
how they
objectionable
react.
to that, but I want to make sure we keep it open and see who applies before we just award all the positions to them. But they
Right.
certainly put on, a nice event for Christmas, and they range it well. And if they take that same attitude and the same exuberance into the, the Halloween, perhaps Easter, whatever else we want to do, I don't see harm in it being the same people. And then it sort of, as Faye said, they're not an elected, they're just a volunteer committee. It at least acknowledges what they've been doing and legitimizes their committee more if we bring them into the fold and have public funds available. And, it's not a bad thing necessarily to have that committee on there if that's who we have. But I don't want to discount anybody that applies. We'd have to have an application
Right.
period, consider all the applicants, probably choose 5 voting members and have alternates, so if voting members are the alternates can come and vote, so they can still get things done. So maybe open up to 8 positions, 5 voting members and 3 alternates. And the alternates could be chaired 1, 2, and 3 for stepping in for voting if there's people missing at any given meeting.
Another possibility of looking at this is they develop all the plans, they work it all. But whatever budget line item we give them has to come back to the Board of Selectmen for approval of use.
I think it usually does anyways. Even the library comes to spend their funds. Don't they still have to come to?
Well, it
request
goes
to
through a
expend?
pay warrant, pretty much. They pay what they're
You
paying,
have
and
to
then they
approve-
send you
have to
a,
approve the warrant process, eh?
but I mean pre-approval to use these funds so that, say we give them $1,500 for all the holidays. Some of the benefit of taking away the potential inner turmoil they might have is to know that final decision isn't theirs as to where all that money goes. So if they are 70% Christmas and Berry and 30% someone else, just throwing out numbers, and then 85–90% of that money is all of a sudden delegated towards Christmas, and what happened to Halloween again, you can blame us, not them. So they're just back to organizing and trying the best they can with the budget they've been given.
What I'm looking at for.
Just
for-
curious.
What I'm looking at for a 2020 budget is now, that committee is now going to submit a budget request, and they're going to say, we want, for these events that we want to put on, we're requesting these funds. Rather, because that 1,500 is kind of I want to say a seed money.
They could even have a
issue
capital
where
plan.
it is, it is
For
where it is.
decorations and things.
We're not spending any additional money than what we're already expending, but going into future years, they'd be required to come be part of the budgeting process and ask for individual lines per holiday.
Yeah.
And I can understand that.
I do
A year
like the
from now,
idea of
when
the
we
final
actually have
approval
created
though.
this whole thing.
I like the idea of when they've got their plan for a particular holiday ready, to bring it before us, to approve the funds for what they've got planned, just to
You
have.
know,
I
you
guess
kinda
the
draft
only-
something
It gives us a
start
chance
this
to
year
look at it and then make
transfer
sure
to
the
what you're
chief police looks
suggesting.
at it and things like that again too, before we say go ahead and do it. We make sure we've done all the,
I guess the only concern, not
Precautions.
concern, but comment I would have about that is you're charging this committee to do a job, and then you're taking it back saying, we don't think you can
Mhm.
do the full job, we wanna really approve every move you make. So
Not at all.
well, yeah, they're charged with just putting these events together and using that money, we don't do that for any departments. You do not ever have departments that sit in front of you and say, hi, we'd like to buy 5 reams of paper this month. Or, you
And
know,
that may
or
change,
high,
and that may change with time. But I think it's certainly reasonable to have them bring their planned event before us so we can look at it, make sure we don't have issues with conflicts with what we have buildings rented out for, or land in places we've promised out.
Right.
It needs to come back before us, and just make
Yeah.
sure that, I mean, like, we don't wanna see the whole thing dumped on Christmas.
I mean, I could see like
we'd have the opportunity to
similar-
just make sure of
I could see
that.
like similar, like, youth commission comes in and says, hey, we have events A through B planned.
Right.
That's what we have going on, but we don't approve any of their spending either.
Well, they came in
I-
and requested
To buy chairs, and to buy.
40 tickets to the aquarium or whatever last year. They asked us before they did it.
Yeah.
The
That's-
police
that's
will
certainly
ask
reasonable.
before they use their revolving account from administrative fees. There are certain accounts where they will come before us to ask to use it before they can use it. This being a new committee, I don't think is necessarily bad in introducing that as the first step until, as Andrew had meant, like if we wanted to get this committee ready and going within 2 months, great, but I don't think we're gonna be at that point and ready for a budget the way Andrew just
Right.
said his vision is for another year.
And we
So
can't.
give them a chance to have it and come to us, and then maybe by next fall, we revise the charge and say, come December, you're gonna have to start having a budget ready so that we can go through the regular budget process, and then kind of put it right back to them.
It's gotta
But
be
let them
learning
grow
curve.
into it a little so that it's, and what I mean by that is this isn't nitpicking them. The real goal I'm bringing this up for is because we're bringing people from different holidays and different desires, this'll help maybe take some of the stress off of them, thinking negative thoughts about the other of where did that money go, when you can kind of come back and just point at the selectmen and say, they made the final decision this year, you get the budget, now you can go back to just managing the 1,200 on Christmas, the 300 on Halloween, or we say, nope, it's gonna be 800 and 700, and you gotta figure out the rest. I don't know, I'm just making up numbers now, but the concept is, we'll take on the heat for the first 8 months or whatever, and then, so that's my recommendation on starting the charge.
Right. The scheme boards like that were brought in by the chief for Halloween, plans for the roads, and that was overly detailed. He did a great job. We don't need that much, but we want to help make sure that they're thinking of these things. They're thinking about road closure if they need it, police detail if we need it, buildings use if they need to get into,
Yeah, very
the
sensible.
town hall of things. It's things that, at least in the first year anyways, or 2 of the charge, we'd make sure that they come with us. We help work those things out, make sure they've thought of everything. It's not to criticize them or say we don't trust them, but it's gonna be a new committee, and, since there's no guidance there at all, they're gonna be, I think, stumbling through it, trying to figure it out as they go, and they probably appreciate getting to come in front of the committee, presenting what they've got so far, and, just getting our thoughts on it, not to dictate how we want them to do it, but just get our thoughts on it. Will ease their minds, I think, on things, and help prepare them to think about how to budget for the future, because they may not even have any idea how to do that. So,
Just out of curiosity, the holiday committee now has $1,500, right?
And the
Mhm.
Christmas and Barre Committee
Christmas and
uses
Barre.
holiday decoration funds, which are $1,500.
Right, so they come before the finance committee every year with that budget.
No.
Yes.
Yes, they do.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
they do.
They came last year, but I don't think they came a couple of years before that.
Okay, well. they
Because
came
it's just
last
kind
year.
of
They
plugged
submit
in.
the number, I think,
Right,
at
they
least
were here
some.
last year. So are we going to up this amount to $1,500? Or
The initial proposal upped it $500
Mhm.
to
to
2,000.
2,000?
To 2,000.
Mhm.
And do they spend the whole $1,500 every?
I'm not 100% sure about
Yeah.
that. I think there were some years, Claire's on top of those
Yeah, I don't.
people that
I
leave
haven't
balances, I'm not 100% sure. Mhm.
Okay.
but certainly, when you have the committee, they have the ability to receive donations. And I think when there's an actual elected or appointed committee for this, you get a better chance of people being willing to donate, and make donations. So we may have extra funds come in without, budgeting more funds. They may be able to get monies in from, you know, businesses and things that wanna participate and wanna see it. It's good for everyone when it
So do
happens.
we know if people donate now to this Christmas
Mhm.
parade outside of 1500?
I don't know that.
Oh, they do, Charlie?
I've heard they did, I
Okay.
didn't deal with it, but one of the things that the committee may wanna do is become like a sponsor more than, you know, they may wanna just say, okay, we've got a Christmas in Barre group. A portion of our funds can just go to them and say, that might be more practical. And let them handle it and say, you know, that sort of thing, and they can solicit the money and et cetera.
In the first year that we did the Halloween event, we didn't have a lot of overhead costs.
Mhm.
So, in the cost aspect of it isn't huge when you're looking at putting on some of these events. It's more of getting the manpower to drum up the volunteers to
Mhm.
participate in it.
Mhm.
So, I mean, yeah, we're putting in a little bit extra, but in reality, to think that little bit extra is gonna go a long way when you look at what the actual
Mhm.
expenses are.
But now that you made Halloween such a hit this year, it's gonna grow next year.
Yeah.
It's
I
gonna
still
get
don't
bigger.
think it'll
And-
cost a lot of money.
Yeah,
to
the-
put
No,
it
but
on.
it's-
We've already
it's-
spent that holiday decorations account down to the last penny,
They did?
yes. According to the accountant's update, it's 100% encumbered, all done.
And as I said, but not really audibly before, there may be something aspect to this, there may be a capital fund for this, that they look at, you know, staging of things, like if they have a manger scene, there may be things they want to purchase, you know, that would be smarter to spread out over a couple of years, and the committee could look at ideas of things they might like to have for
And
these
that's where we
different
say,
events.
go get all your friends and build it.
Well, to a point, but also if
That's
they,
right.
but if they want
I
something.
do truly support volunteerism on a lot of this
Right.
stuff.
But
That's
if-
just
But I'm saying,
personal.
if they're looking for something that might cost $3,000, and we have several years to put some money aside for it, it's not a big hit to take if it's worth it. But you'd want to see a group in charge of that before you'd spend any money like that. So it does give potential for us to invest in these things, if we wanted to.
Mhm.
You know, different lightings.
Where do these donations show up on the books?
They are not a town committee, so that
It's
whatever
a
they
volunteer
receive
committee.
does not come to the
Yeah,
town.
yeah,
They
not a
spend on
town
their own
committee.
Well, where does it
accounting.
go? Doesn't just go to space.
No, but I don't know about Christmas in Barre, but I do know there's other groups that have gift accounts. And it-
Yeah, I know the
Yeah.
ambulance does.
Correct,
Yeah.
and so it goes through the accountant.
Yeah, that's right.
But I don't think you probably would have to ask for specific reports on those gift accounts.
Because it would be informative to know if there are being donations made.
Right.
Like Charlie said, he's heard, well,
Yeah,
do we have a fact? Does
Right.
somebody-
Well, if it doesn't
Like
come,
maybe the selectmen should,
if it doesn't come through the accountant, then we won't know.
Right, if,
well, where does it go?
You would
If-
have to ask, say,
Right.
we're talking about Christmas in Barre, you'd
Right.
have to ask that group.
if that committee is collecting.
That's, Claire, technically, that's like
That's-
me asking you, how did you pay for lunch yesterday? It's your business. They are a private entity right now, Christmas in Barre. They are not a town appointed, they have no, so
Yeah, we
we are
didn't
just
appoint a Christmas
allowing them to
But-
spend some town funds to help make that event
So
occur.
when they
But any
become-
other funds they receive were never public funds. So it wasn't anything that we have requirements for accounting on.
We'd have to set up an account for our committee, so that funds go into a specific account that are donated towards that.
This is the
If they
intent to
receive
create
it.
that.
If they receive, right,
Really.
if there are
Like-
donations made to the committee, they'd have to go.
Because how would somebody, I'm thinking from the other end, make a donation? Say they make a big donation, a couple of $1,000s.
Right.
That'd be very nice.
How are they going to do that to show on their tax return that they made this donation?
Well,
Well,
for an example, we have Barre Historical Commission and then
Yeah.
Barre Historical Society. The
Yeah.
society is private. They may
Yeah.
receive donations and maybe they bank it, Fidelity Bank here on the Common. That we probably would not be privy to what they do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
But
don't
you know you've got those two.
Right.
We don't
Like the
necessarily.
I think
person
one of the
saying
things
you
we're
don't
trying to
know.
do
Well,
is
that's why we're trying to separate.
just make it a
We need
little,
to-
it needs to be a little
Yeah.
neater,
The committee
Yeah.
itself that we create might be able to help answer those questions also.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know who they know and what network.
It
I mean,
may
I
well
think-
be people give them cash and they just take it and spend it and don't record it in any way. That's not how committees should work. But if people want to give them cash and not trace the cash, that's their business. And if they, use it that
And then
way.
you don't know
But
whether you
if,
spent that
but
cash
if they
or-
are an
That's
actual
right.
committee and they do receive actual gifts and somebody wanted a write-off for it, it would have to, you'd think, go into an appropriate account, which should be a nonprofit account, and there's
Yeah.
rules to set up and establish that as well. Doesn't mean they do any of that.
Yeah, I mean, we're not saying that any of that goes on, you know what I mean?
No, I'm saying we have no
Yeah.
way of knowing
I think
because
the
it's
Christmas
got
to Barre
nothing.
group does a great, I think they do a great thing on the common, and I'm sure that the funds, the $1,500 that we put out, I'm sure does not pay for half of the stuff that they put on.
Absolutely.
So, and I'm sure a lot of it is donations, like there's groups that come in and donate X, Y, Z, and it could be like the coloring books or the candy canes, or there's all kinds of stuff that goes on. So it may not necessarily be this monetary donation that we're speaking of, like that Montechusett
must have a
Opportunity
record of
Council donates certain things, so
I hope they have a record of
I don't know if they're required to. That's the thing, they're a private group that's putting on this great
Any
thing.
groups,
At this moment, the only thing that we oversee is the use of town property with this event. But I think because Halloween became so good, Andrew and I talked and thought it would be a good idea to try to get a committee, because honestly, Andrew, myself, and the chief threw the whole event together. And we had a great time. I'll definitely be part of it again next year, but there should be a group that maybe they had better ideas and they want to bring more things in, and that can be their job.
And that would help
So that
bring
was the thought.
donations above board, we see them and understand what's coming in as well, because that would have an account then.
I'll be right back.
Because we have no way of knowing who gives what to someone else. There's no way
it.
for
Well,
us
I
to
know
know.
the PTO really liked that Halloween.
Yeah,
I
and
think
we
everybody
were
did.
a little
It was-
late in the game. We were a little late in the game with the PTO, but we talked and we already kind of started formulating an idea for next year, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because my granddaughter's
Okay.
on that.
Yeah, and they have a
Yeah.
great event too, so we gotta try to,
Yeah.
bring it all together,
And
that's
she
all.
said it's good to have somebody else help it too.
I'm
Okay, so
sure.
I guess you got the idea that
Yeah,
a committee would be
We'll
able
proceed.
to,
Right.
okay,
All sorts of
ideas,
ideas on how to do it and what we need, but
okay. I guess we could start through with your report if you
Right,
wanna
sure,
give
yeah.
a quick report.
Yeah, no
Then we'll
problem.
go back to the selectmen when Matt gets back.
No problem. So we got a couple of good grants through the Community Compact Program. One was a $20,000 grant under the Best Practices Program for the development of an economic development plan through CMRPC. And that I've asked, I'm basically working with them right now to develop a full charge. They'll go to the state for them to draft a contract award for you guys to approve. But basically, they've done a similar program in both, or in North Brookfield they did one, and then Northbridge was another. But it's basically, the overall goal is to identify priority development locations and kind of hold some stakeholder meetings with residents and try to come up with a game plan to encourage economic development in town. The other one was a $95,000 efficiency and regionalization grant for a shared economic development director between the towns of Barre, Hardwick, Hubbardston, New Braintree, and Oakham. And that one was announced at the end of last week. Green Communities Grant, we are almost done with the upgrade of the lighting to all of our town buildings. You can see this room did receive the LED lighting upgrade already. The fire stations, the senior center, were already done. The last place that they had to do was the DPW. But once that's done, we're going to be looking at our application for 2018, as long as we can get this done by the cutoff of the end of this month. And what we are currently looking at is some weatherization upgrades, but also the installation of a couple of electric vehicle charging stations and up to 2 electric vehicles for the towns. And we've identified the locations of this building right out on the other side of these windows here. One on the common right across from where the town hall is, so not against the town hall, but the opposite side of the street. One at the fire station, because the idea is that if we got at least one electric vehicle would be used for the fire department inspector to be used as an inspection vehicle. And then, if possible, a fourth one could be put at the public safety complex. But kind of looking with the consultants, it seemed that the public safety complex was going to be the most in-depth and most expensive installation because of distance to an electrical panel, and the fact that they basically be trenching through brand new construction. So that one was kind of the least feasible of all the ones.
What about the senior center?
That could be a possibility.
Or
So
some-
electric
or something in
vehicle
South
could,
Barre.
benefit them as well, maybe.
Yeah, one of the reasons why we looked at the downtown area for a charging station is because some towns have kind of looked at these as economic drivers, because we're really in an area where there are none of these charging stations around us. I know that Hardwick actually just put in a few, but generally the central Mass area it doesn't have a lot. So the thought is that if you put them in a downtown area, people have to be there for 20 minutes and charge, so while they're down there, they're gonna shop at your downtown. at your
That's a
downtown
good
area.
idea.
All the
Greg.
more
What about the
reason-
municipal lot in South Barre?
There's a lot in South Bay, the municipal lot, and there's also even further
What does it
down.
say at Nornay Park?
I mean, I don't know, we don't have anything near the IGA Plaza and things like that, but certainly something in South Barre. There are other shops and stores down there, and more potential for growth down there if
Yeah.
we can get people down that way too. So
Maybe
I
we can
don't,
do the municipal lot that's down there in
Mhm.
South Barre on Nornay Park.
Yeah, and as long as it has a good access to an electrical panel, they can easily just put in a box right there and another charging.
but there's
port.
also
I think
the,
they have a
About
meter right
50
there,
feet
so-
of,
there's also
trenching to get
Barry
to the meter,
Station
I think.
3, our old Station 2, is right by the
Opposite
baseball
corner.
fields down there.
The what?
The old fire station 2, which is the Station 3, it's basically used for storage now.
Well,
It's got,
But
yeah,
you
that was
think,
very
what were the
close.
people, you're gonna think people are gonna park their car for 20 minutes to charge,
Right.
where are they gonna go there?
well, that's what I'm saying.
I'm just-
Walking distance from there is still
Yeah.
are the other businesses down. There's a couple businesses, there's a hairdresser down there, there's, but, yeah, something. The other, like I said, down the Lene Park, you still have restaurants and other things down that end too. So
Right.
something down there, not just
General
everything
idea,
up here.
Yeah,
I'd
Yeah.
like to see at least one down there for sure before we talk about 3 up here.
Yeah, what we might do is, it depends on what how much they're willing to give out this year, because we have some general rough estimates as far as what the costs are, and I think that whatever the cost for the one up here on the North Common is gonna be similar to what it would be on the South, what they quote for the South Common. It's gonna be the same kind of scope of work. So that's something that we can talk with, CMRPC as our grant applicant writer to say, do we have a chance of, do we have a good chance if we put in for all 4?
But are we smarter pulling this building off the list, keeping it down on
well,
across?
the only thing with
keep
that
it
is
across-
Yeah.
our building inspector has an electric car now from Hardwick. And so like today, she had 36 miles left on a charge, so she,
Right, but I don't want to base it on our building inspector's one car. I want to base it, like we said, on bringing people that'll stop in the town. So if we, before I'd have one here for our building inspector, I'd rather have the one in front of the town hall and, the town hall building for people to come to the common and use all the shops and restaurants there. And a second one down in Nornay Park to bring, people in to those businesses before we just take care of our building inspector. If need be, she can have lunch out and park it at lunch outside there and charge it, you know what I mean? She can certainly make it there for the extra half a mile, rather than expect everyone to come here to use it, where what is there right here?
We're within walking distance of downtown. So
Right,
that's-
but downtown's much closer walking distance if we're
Yeah,
right there
it-
downtown.
It's just,
That's
it's a,
my opinion. I
we're
would-
still a little bit, far off on where we're actually submitting the grant. The idea was that we were talking about this, if this is where she has to keep the car overnight. She's gotta plug it in and walk away. This seemed to be the most logical, and also the fact that you have the electrical line, right? It comes in on this side of the building.
Well,
You're
also
only-
if-
You're going a very short distance.
If the car's gonna be parked overnight and you did put a charging unit at the fire station, the car could be at the fire station overnight
Right.
and they just leave from there, go down there, grab the car and start the day.
Or even the fire inspector could come up here.
Same thing,
plug it in here,
absolutely.
you could have the two
Either,
municipal vehicles.
either. So we don't need here in the fire station. I'd rather see one of those go to South Barry.
And I think when we were talking, the more feasible location was this one than the fire station because uncertain futures. You know, we know that we're not, going to build a new fire station tomorrow.
We can agree at that point, we don't need to go any further.
But, at the same time, if we're gonna get a grant, they might look at the building itself and go, yeah, but
Right,
Are
so
you gonna
all the
get
more
the-
reason to say here in front of the Henry Woods in a third location down Nornay Park or something down there. And the fourth would be the one that'd be more subject to think where you're gonna go, but same thing I'd say for the fire inspector, they could certainly park the vehicle here, and come here in the morning and grab the vehicle when they start their business of the day, rather than just drive right there. It's really, it's not a big deal to come up here, they're out and about all day anyways.
all right,
So
so
I like that idea.
moving on. Public safety building, we are getting closer to that. We have the internal network all set up. Yesterday, I was here with the communications vendor, going through locations of the individual phones, sent them over the invoices they needed for the town, so they're working on developing their phone network and should have a contract over to me soon. We have a tentative go live date of February 5th, 4th or 5th?
This is a Monday.
Yeah, first Monday of February to be the go live date of that building. So we have that, we need still need to confirm a date with Priority Security that they're gonna be on site, putting in the security cameras that just showed up on site today. So now that we have the security cameras, they can come in, finalize that work. And we just put in the final purchase order for the computers, that once they're on site, all the computers will be live. So, they got a time as far as that. We're closer and we're shooting for the 4th, or 5th, whichever day was the Monday. And then just finally, that the budgets have been sent to you guys, and I'm gonna be releasing a public version of it this week. There were just some tweaks I wanted to make based off of the initial comments that I received at the first public meeting with the finance board, kind of just based off of the way some numbers were presented and presenting them in a better fashion. So making those adjustments and then releasing it for public view. So that's what I got.
Okay.
Oh, and for the next meeting, I will have, the fire chief is proposing some upgrades, or I'm sorry, some updates to the fee schedule. I'll be forwarding those to you guys for review, but we'll be advertising a fee increase hearing for the ambulance service. That'll be on your next agenda, and also Friday and Saturday of this week, I will be at the Mass Municipal Association conference.
Okay. Okay, did the board members have anything to report? We skipped over that to you, Matt, when you were gone, so.
One thing I'm just trying to do, I haven't made a major press, mostly because I understand a lot of people have been busy doing a million other things, is I'm still trying to push for getting a better understanding of true cable distribution throughout the town, and figure out underserved areas. I want to get that, and I want to get a quote from Charter to know what it would cost to install down all these roads. And then we got to look at a means to finance that, because I think it's critical for our future growth in this town to provide broadband internet access that's reliable to all residential households. I know if I had children and I'm looking for a house and it doesn't have internet, I'm just moving right past that house and looking for the next one. You can't rely on satellite with the weather around here, and beyond that, you're talking some pretty old service if you're trying to use your phone line. So you're not living in modern times in that regard. So that's an extreme priority of mine. Back in last year when I was talking about how we should be able to help out our students as much as the schools. This was part of that. My effort is, if we can get some money back from your budget, we can spend it to try to get this done. So we gotta look at what it takes to, do that. And then we gotta figure out how to fund it. But it starts with figuring out the costs and then going from there. So that's my biggest thing I've been kind of working behind the scenes, is to try to help the rest of the, underserved population.
Okay.
I think the last time we talked about that, didn't we find out that Verizon was beginning to cap some poles with 5G capability, and we were looking towards that?
They can't do it without broadband on the pole that they're connecting to carry it from there. So they need hardwired to that device to then reach out. So if you don't already have cable, because nobody has fiber optic in the city really, in the town really. I mean, we might have a couple buildings we connected, but we're not really distributed with any fiber optic. So the only broadband that can carry the Verizon signal through the hard wires is cable. So if we don't have the cable there, we can't carry the 4G, because it needs a base to then feed into the hardwired network.
Because if we're gonna look into ways to bring the, internet service to people, I think we'd be remiss not to look into the cost of implementing that as well, as opposed to just the cable. It sounds like that service is going to be literally hundreds of times faster and better than the standard cable service. So I'd just be curious what they would need to be able to establish that, and what that would cost us, as opposed to just the cost to run cable.
They need two things: a population that warrants it.
But we don't know what it's gonna cost yet, and if that's established, it may be spreadable easier, especially if it is a boosted signal. Do you know what I'm saying? Just something else to think about. I agree, it's unbelievable to me, I mean, I know it, but it's nearly unbelievable, unfathomable that we don't have internet service to everyone in this town, but we have many, many households that don't. And quite frankly, that's part to do with the contract we're engaged in. The density requirement for them to run cable was disgusting. And I don't know how that got through, but it shouldn't have. And if and when we do another contract with them, I don't know when this is up, we should consider
I think
changing
it
that.
was 10 years from 2014.
We need to change, oh my gosh, they just signed that, that is horrible. I mean, it was something ridiculous, like,
We were looking at it when.
like
we were
10 or
having
20
issues
houses
getting-
per mile, which almost nothing in this town has that kind of density. There's virtually zero roads, 10% of our roads qualified that they'd have to run cable down with the way that contract is written, and that is just horrible. What's the expense to renege on the contract? I would consider that. It's just.
We gotta look at what other municipalities have for contracts too. 'cause
I know, but
those
any
basically-
contract, if you do violate it and break out of it, there's a cost to do that. There's a penalty.
And then there's a cost to get someone else to take it over.
Right, and there's also, but I'm saying,
Might as well just pay to spin the wires down the street.
if we're gonna discuss costs for putting wires down there and other things, I'd like to include in that penalty cost if we did back out of this. It's like getting out of your cell phone contract. Sure, you can dump your cell phone a year early, and there's a designated cost to do that. Sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not. A chance to break that contract and even rewrite and have them come up with a better, population density to run wires. It's just, it doesn't take into account our town. And even if there was some language in there that said, okay, you only have to run it with a certain density on the roads or population per mile, but there should have been a finite time until the entire town was promised to be covered.
Well, I think
Because this contract does not serve
to put
a
this
large
into
volume of our town.
perspective, the charter group and the lawyer that we hired that specifically deals with these contracts said, this town will probably never negotiate another cable contract because it's going to be obsolete.
Which is why I'm
So-
saying we should look towards the 5G aspect.
I love that statement, when there's been no proof that anything works better than hardwire.
Right.
You
No,
have
I
too many
agree, but I
blocks, you
think-
go into a city, you can't get Verizon signal because you got skyscrapers all around you.
Was it Greenfield that did free Wi-Fi in the city with that 5G, or Deerfield?
But
One
I'm
of the-
not-
Something out there did it. I'd be curious to see how it's working.
So interestingly, I'm not so sure if the contract that we have requires internet. It's
It doesn't.
cable, it's for television,
Internet is not regulated by the state.
correct. So even if we could get Charter to expand to all these roads, which we're hopeful that would include internet, it may not.
No, it's just the wire.
But
We
do you
would
know what
be
I'm saying?
requesting a quote to carry the same wire they carry for any resident that gives them the triple option if they so chose.
Mhm.
The first
So
step is
it's
figure out
kind of
who's
a-
not, so.
It's just
Yeah.
carried with the TV, you get the internet. But,
Yeah, it's not a special.
and we would need to
special wire.
specify that, agreed, so that they understood that, no, don't give me that half-size wire because you think you're just giving me TV.
Mhm.
If there is such a thing. I'm just saying, we would wanna make sure we cover that.
I'll try to go through some of the new friends that I've made through the last 6 months here. See if
And-
I can't get some of that.
But here's the other thing with this question of that whole 5G. 5G comes to Massachusetts, Barry's gonna be the last town to get it too.
Mhm.
Or like Western Mass towns that are the last to get cable. I don't wanna wait for the next technology, cause that means we technically would have to wait 3 technologies till we get to the technology that.
Everybody else is at.
What I wanna do is find the fastest way that is not overly expensive. In other words, don't pay a lot more just because we want it fast. But I don't wanna waste my time looking at technologies that we'll never be able to get here yet. Because it's not even in Worcester, it's not even in Lowell or New Bedford or Boston. Like 5G isn't really there yet. I think it's still just being talked about in eastern.
Fiber
and
optic
coast.
is really at the top of the line.
But 5G, because it's not out there, this may be we don't know, this may be the perfect test area for something like that, that they might be very willing to come work with us to see how it works in these areas and to get it out there and running at a smaller scale than going after the city of Boston or the city of Worcester. So I wouldn't discount it until we at least inquire. That's all I'm saying.
If Worcester gets the Amazon bid, I'm sure we'll be, and the Paw Sox, I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more about that. But, hey,
I
you know,
follow
we,
your
we
point.
gotta know where we gotta stand, you know, where we gotta be right now. We gotta figure out who it is that's underserved and make a game plan now, starting from that. Get a baseline number and know where we gotta negotiate, so.
Yeah. I just don't wanna get too bottled up with what's all our options, because that just
Well,
skips
not
one
all
more
of them.
fiscal year of figuring it out. And these kids that need it are either gonna graduate or not graduate, yet the whole time they're trying to do it, they gotta work off of,
So I'm not gonna.
they're going to the library to do their homework.
Speaking
I'm
of-
not putting a poll on the website to ask whether or not you're able to get online, cause that might be a little underserved.
No,
I do
but
think-
I'm sure everybody would answer yes.
we gotta work it out and we gotta look at those that might know.
Speaking of underserved, I do not believe the cable committee is a full committee. It may be
Is it
one
just
member-
Josh?
It may be just Josh at this moment, so if there's people out there that are interested in maybe getting internet cable to their own property that you don't have right now, or have knowledge, or, you know,
Might
it
be
may
a
be
great
good to
committee
group
to
that
try to
committee.
get on.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Get it advertised.
Yeah.
We have had a
Listed.
couple of letters in this past year from people concerned about it. Great time to step up and get on the committee and get your voice heard better. Absolutely.
Just speaking of underserved.
Okay.
Good point.
And
Fred.
one
Good
last
point.
item
Yep.
that we just recently were made aware of today. We now have an opening on the finance committee again. So please submit applications and fill in that vacancy.
Who dropped off now?
Stephanie.
Stephanie?
Personal obligations, she couldn't make the commitment in too
Yeah.
many directions. I think is how she worded it. So,
Something to
I
that.
might know somebody that's, might be interested.
So, just wanted to get it out there again. We have several committees with several vacancies. Just,
I don't know somebody that's, might be interested.
I think is how she worded it. So, just wanted to get it out there again. We have several committees with several vacancies. Just, work through the town administrator's office to provide an application and get the ball rolling. We can use the help.
Okay, with that, I've come to the end. And we have an executive session.
We have three different ones. One per exemption 2 and then 2 per exemption 3.
Okay. We want to take a quick break before we go into...
No, I want us to be done.
No break, just go.
Just go.
I took my break while everybody else was talking. I'm just joking. Please
Okay.
forgive my sarcasm.
Okay, we thank you for your, buddy, thank you, Brad.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night,
I
Ellie.
had tonight, and I've taped it, on
Peter Simmons going to
Cannabis.
this right now.
For
how the
the,
state is
oh,
going.
broadband stuff,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I
My
taped
brother's
it.
got dial-up
so
from
you'll
Verizon.
watch it.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
I
Yeah.
could've
Yeah,
called
it
and
is.
watched
It's
it,
tough
see what
to-
they
That
said.
anybody
Yeah,
has it now
that's
is
a
ridiculous,
good
but
way to
they've,
do it.
Yeah,
there's,
they
there's,
announced it.
and maybe that's something else we need to talk to the state offices about. There's no requirements to make these companies get everybody up, and they should be.
That's-
So Rick can finish taping.
I make a motion that we will move into executive session on 3 separate exemptions. And when we return, it will be just to adjourn the meeting.
I second the motion.
Okay, call for a vote, it's roll call. Pat?
Aye.
Peg?
Aye.
Myself, yes, that's unanimous.